Thank you so much, you two, for joining me this evening to talk about The Cottage that's currently playing at the Players Guild of Dearborn. How are you two doing?
Doing well
Great.
tonight, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Of course, I'm so excited to talk about the show. I got to catch it on Saturday, and it is quite possibly one of the funniest shows I've seen in such a long time.
We'll take it.
So I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Um, so you've been running for 2 weekends now. Kori, how's that run been so far?
It's been really great. The only thing is we'd love to see more people in the audience. So if there are people that are listening to this podcast, we would love to see you there because like you said, this truly is one of the funniest scripts. I think it's just hilarious. It's great reading it. It's even better seeing it. So in my totally unbiased opinion.
Josh, how about for you? How's the past 2 weekends been?
I am just so proud, like so proud. These actors have just been crushing it. Um, Very early on, we knew we'd have a very funny show, but finally getting them in front of an audience has just delivered every expectation and then some. So it's just basking in the glow of their comedy. It's amazing.
While we're not going to get too much into we don't want to spoil some of the stuff because
Right.
there's quite a heavy spoilers in the show, but
Yeah.
this is one of the most active shows I have ever seen on a stage where there's a lot of running around. There's a lot of physical humor going on. Kori, what's that kind of like on stage for you? Not only do you have a lot of stuff going on, but you're also you are constantly snacking on the stage. And I kept thinking, I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's a work unto itself. There were some scenes where you were had to stop to say a line, and I was like, whew.
Yeah. Yeah, that's difficult. I have eaten or drank in a lot of shows recently, so I suppose I'm just getting used to it, but the I mean, you really do have to think about, okay, can I say this with my mouth full, sort of? Would that add to the comedy? Am I going to miss something? Will the audience miss something important if I'm, will they be grossed out because my mouth is full of food? So making sure to hit those beats properly and make sure that anything important that you're saying that matters to the story, the audience can still hear. So there are certain ones where I'll kind of do it with my mouth full, but other ones I if I'm chewing on something and can kind of swallow and get rid of it, I'd rather do that and then say the line. So it's something you definitely have to take notice of throughout the show.
I mean, it definitely adds to like I said, that physical humor. This show is
Mhm.
nonstop. You're moving and moving and moving.
Mhm.
Um, but we're gonna kind of jump in a little bit to the story. And Josh, I'm gonna throw this one to you. What's the
Okay.
story of The Cottage without giving away too much? Which I know is kind of the task to talk about this without spoiling too
Right.
much of the play.
The trick. Well, the play takes place in the early 20s in the British countryside, and right away it opens on two characters, Sylvia and Beau. Every year they meet for their annual night together. They're having a little affair. Um, but this year Sylvia decides that that's not enough for her anymore. And so she makes moves to kind of make her once a year arrangement with Beau a little more permanent. And then throughout the morning, a number of visitors arrive, number of surprises. There's a potential murder plot in the midst. So a lot spirals out of control really fast, and it's a lot of fun.
I have to say that I pride myself on usually figuring out twists and turns pretty early in shows because I've read, growing up, I read a lot of books. I loved mysteries. I love trying to solve a movie or a TV show beforehand. And that first time when they were finally just oh, they were having an affair, I think I gasped just as loud as everybody else. I was like, I did not see that coming. And then from there on out, it was literally just one thing after another. I was just like, there's no predicting this show and where it's going to possibly end.
No.
So, Kori, I think Josh mentioned in the email, but you actually brought this play to the Guild, correct?
Yes, I am on our script committee. So we have some other members who were lucky enough to see it on Broadway. And I keep up pretty much with what's happening on Broadway. I have another trip coming up next weekend. So
Yay.
I knew about it. I knew about Sandy Rustin because she also did the adaptation of Clue that is very popular. So, and then Jason Alexander was directing it, Eric McCormick, Laura Bell Bundy. It was really, famous people who were in it. So it kind of kept tabs on it. And then the women, some women from our theater went and saw it and texted me right away and said, we have to do this at the Guild. I said, I'm on it. As soon as it's available, I'm bringing it. So I think it was 2 seasons ago. I think it was in 2023 that it was there. And so as soon as we saw that it was available, it was on the list, and I was pushing it and had gotten a script at the drama bookshop. So I was a big fan.
I didn't realize that this was done by the person who wrote Clue, but that makes a lot of sense because
Yes.
there's a lot of that same comedic beats going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's great with that.
So when you kind of got your hands on that script, what was it that really stood out to you that you were like, it sounds like quite a lot of people love this one, but what made you like, this is the one we have to do?
I think we do farce really well at the Guild. I thought that it would fit the Guild stage. So just kind of those basics of a box set, a 6-person cast, but then reading the show, it just because I didn't know from just seeing clips on social media how it ended or what any of the twists and turns were. So reading it and going along and going, oh my gosh, this is what's happening. And like, to be perfectly honest, there's some parts of it that it just kind of gets stupid, but
So
in a very
stupid.
funny way. I mean, it's just like stupid comedy, like fart jokes. And so as I'm reading this and going along and getting to the end, I was just like, this is so ridiculous. It's so funny. We would have so much fun. I really want to be in this show. We really need to bring it to the Guild. And I was just happy that we approved it for this season. And it was truly just a bonus to get to work with Josh and our assistant director, Kristen, to actually be in the show. But I was happy just having it in the season.
I have to say that speaking of that fart joke, there was 2 women in front of me, and one leaned over right before, and she goes, I think there's going to be a fart joke here. And I was like, there's no way there's going to be a fart joke here. And then it was. And I was like, oh no, I stand corrected. And that audience, like, that's just one example of when the audience ate it up. We had a few people that were just so roarious with laughter that, like, you almost couldn't hear the lines because they were they were crying out there in the audience.
Yeah,
I've
that's
actually
not a bad
heard,
problem to have.
no, I've heard that some people have bought second tickets because they missed details through the laughter the first time. So we'll take it. We'll take it.
Yeah, I mean, there's also so much to go on that, like, you could see it 6 different times and follow 6 different people, and get a whole different story every single time.
Exactly.
Yeah. Watching all of our different facial expressions because we're all like looking at each other and making faces and stuff. So yes, I highly recommend coming to see it all 3 times this weekend and picking one of us to watch.
It's actually funny. So I know I mentioned the email. I got to see you in five women wearing the same, and your facial expressions in that show were something that, like, I even noted in the review. I was like, you had such a facial expression. And so it was one of the things I kept looking to because you were like, you could say a lot by not saying anything. So even like when you were eating, like you would roll your eyes at somebody and it'd be like, it was hilarious.
Thank you.
So Josh, and obviously besides it being funny, what drew you to wanting to direct this show? Because it sounds like there's quite a lot of love for this show at the Players Guild. I was wondering what kind of drew you into it.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, The Cottage, it's like a love letter to those old-fashioned plays of the 1920s and 30s. So, you're Noel Coward. And I worked on a few shows like that at the Guild, assistant directing. And so when this one came up as part of the new season, it seemed very much a celebration of that, just with everything turned up, all the humor, the pacing, the energy. And so it just felt like a natural progression. The director I worked with on some of these other shows ended up coming around this time as my assistant, Kristen Campbell Lynch. So it was very much like the team getting back together to give this show the justice it deserves on the Guild stage. And we had so much fun doing it.
I was going to say, from the moment Sylvia, so Madeline stepped up
Mhm.
on stage and like her like the way like she held her mouth and the accent, I was like, oh, this
Oh,
is
she's so
this feels like
good.
you're almost watching like a golden age film, you know? Which just I think people
Yeah,
were enraptured by that right from the
we
first moment.
right around the time of auditions, I was rewatching The Crown, and Madeline came into auditions with her like perfect received pronunciation, like Queen's English. I was like, oh,
Yes.
she has this down.
1,000%. I thought of that first season of The Crown and I was like, she has like she nailed that, you know?
Hmm. So good.
um So Kori, who are you playing in the show? Again, don't want to spoil too much, but just kind of who are you and what's kind of your narrative through the play?
So Marjorie is Beau's wife. So there's some familial bonds happening in the show. So that's who she's been married to for probably I think we kind of decided that it's been like somewhere between 7 and 10 years ish that they've been married, and she is 8 months pregnant. So she is getting ready to pop. It's June in the show, and she says the next month is July, and that's when she's due. So there's a lot of wandering around with my giant belly. um, setting trays on top of that while I'm eating, making noises as I'm getting up and down. And then kind of figuring out who Marjorie ends up with by the end of the show. So that's kind of the fun of the show, is that there's 6 people, there's 3 men and 3 women. Not everybody ends up with who you might think they're gonna end up with by the end of the show. So that's the part I of course don't want to 100% spoil, but she definitely is. I think she can be played kind of more as one of the straight characters, but I infuse a little more kind of dippiness sometimes. She's just kind of having fun. Things get revealed about her pretty early on, and then my feeling was that's like a weight off her shoulders that her reveal happens, and so she can just enjoy all the craziness that's happening to the other characters. So that's how I approached playing her.
And we can't gloss over Corey's physical comedy. One of my favorite things is like right after her first entrance, she has a number of great beats where she's bending over in her pregnancy belly to pick things up off the ground. And I love hearing like the women in the audience go, yep, yep, that's it. She nailed it. Got it right.
There's one scene specifically that stood out to me was when you were trying to get off the couch and then you asked for somebody to help you up, and I was like, I have 2 sisters, they've had many children. I was like, yeah, that's exact. I've lived that scene having to help them up because there's
Good.
just no way of getting up off the couch.
I'm so glad it rang true.
And I do like that you said that too. That I was shocked as well about who, and like there was a few different pieces of like I didn't know who was going to end up with who. That was kind
Okay.
of the pieces of like I'm very intrigued with the story because as a psychologist during my day job, you're trying to figure out who's going to be together, and they did, and they kind of throw out some of the tropes that you could have fallen for at the end of the
Yep.
show. It doesn't fall for that old everyone's going to end up with someone, everyone's going to be happy because they're with another person.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So Josh, what is your like approach to directing, or like how do when you get the script, how do you go about translating that to the stage?
So we kind of touched on this a little earlier. There is so much to focus on with this show in particular. All of these characters are very selfish, and as a director, that's kind of fun because their motivations are so clear, or usually clear. And so, like, one of the greatest challenges I had when I was working with this material and trying to devise the blocking was finding ways to isolate that focus, knowing very well that, actor A is going to be catching the audience's attention here. So it's not necessarily about planting a vision, it's guiding and steering attention towards different meandering ways. And so I love the idea of people kind of picking up on all the little details and finding their own sort of path through the story.
Beautiful answer. um Kori, with this being such a hysterical comedy, Is it difficult to not play it up, especially as the audience is like just eating it alive?
Yes, there are times when somebody does something, and I mean this can happen in any show, but
Mhm.
especially for this one where there's a, a joke every 10 seconds or something, making sure that you're holding, that you're not breaking, because your character doesn't necessarily think this ridiculous thing that was just said is funny. This could be very offensive to your character. So trying to hold that, not breaking, it happens sometimes. But and I think audiences kind of find that charming. Not if you're doing it every 10 seconds, but if there's a moment where you might crack a smile, I think that's okay. But I definitely try to make sure, I don't think Marjorie would be laughing at this particular thing, so I don't want the audience to catch me breaking at any point either. So it's difficult, but thankfully that's what rehearsal's for. So you kind of rehearse the the giggles out. You know what's
Sure.
coming, but there have been times over the last 2 weekends that somebody just does something a little bit different, and my thing usually is to turn up stage. I will literally take a moment and just look over there and then come back so that I don't break. And I spend a lot of time sitting on the couch and sitting in the chair, so I can kind of do that or like fix something and come back. So yeah, if you see me looking up stage, it might be because I'm trying not to break.
There was one moment on Saturday where the actor who plays Clark, you
Mhm.
could just tell he was trying to hold it together, and he turned his head a little bit too, and I was like, oh, he's trying so hard not to have like a laughing moment here that's going to break character.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which it did. I think the audience picked up on that, and they lost it as
They think
well.
it's funny. Well, and that, yeah, I mean, there's the part with, I wonder if it was the part with Deirdre. Was she offering things to people?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and that's always a little different because there's some audience interaction. So you don't
Right.
know if they're going to play or if they're just going to be like, what is she doing? So that's one of the parts that's a little bit different every night. So yeah.
Sure. And I can imagine too, without getting stuff away, but there's some scenes between Bo and Clark that are very physical too, that I could imagine are just like, Josh, going through rehearsal, I could just imagine you're probably cracking up trying to
Yeah.
direct these people.
Yeah, it was funny because in the script it said it's something like they share a brotherly moment, and it's the actors we have, Alex and Dylan are just great. I remember giving the note like, "I love all the fighting you're doing. Just remember you're British." Like, we can't go full WWE here. We have to be British quasi-gentlemen. So at least start British and then you can end as American as you want. And the audience just loves those moments. So we're very happy to have them in the show.
Yeah, can you tell they're both WWE fans?
Are they?
Body
Yeah.
checking against the wall. Yep.
Yeah.
I know. Wait, at one part where Clark just jumps up on, Dylan jumps up on the back of Alex's body, and I was just like, oh my God, you guys are going to rip these suits. Like, there's no way we're making out of this. I would have lost. This is why I'm not an actor.
We are,
I know.
we are,
I'm actually surprised they haven't.
I think one shirt collar is coming undone, but everything else seems to
No.
be pretty solid so far. We have, knock on wood, we have one more weekend. So has to hold together 3 more times.
Yeah.
Speaking of, you had mentioned, Kori, about the audience interaction. That's
Mhm.
also kind of different too, because a lot of shows there's not, but like we have
Mhm.
people jumping into the audience, throwing stuff, offering stuff. And I guess this is a question for both of you, but like how does that change the performance for you as an actor, and like how does that come to be? Like, is that in the script, or is that something that you guys developed as you kind of went along?
I
Um,
don't
so
think there was any in the script, really.
there are suggestions in the script.
Yeah.
Okay.
Certain things are thrown into the audience, and I think
Yes. Yeah.
the line in the script is like, it could be funny if this happens. And one of the things I'm most grateful for about this whole company is that they will say yes and all day long. So yes, let's interact with the audience. Let's invite them into this fun. And I think that's kind of the magic of this play in particular you're taking those very strict, let's not break the fourth wall comedies of the early 20th century, and we're just inviting everybody into the fun. So it's a little scary inviting those variables into performance, but you just gotta trust the cast, know that they're prepared for, the greatest of audience interactions and maybe the more reserved audience interactions, and they can make magic out of almost anything.
Kori, what is that like for you as an actress? Like, is it that obviously something that you don't typically do in a lot of
Mhm.
shows,
Mhm.
correct?
Yes, yeah, that's definitely correct. There's certain ones where we do, and the one that's on my mind that is somewhat similar, and I'm directing it right now, is The Play That Goes Wrong, where there is that type of audience interaction
Sure.
that theirs is really built into the show. So this was interesting in that, like Josh said, there were some where something gets flinged into the audience right at the beginning of the show, and then suggestions, but being able to kind of build that out ourselves, that's really fun, where you kind of go, wait, is this going to work? And then when somebody might jump off stage and sit in a seat next to somebody else, the first time that happened, we all just absolutely died. That was great. It was so funny.
Mhm.
So we're all pretty good barometers too. We have a
Sure.
lot of collective experience among us of being like, yeah, I think that's funny, or yeah, maybe we should do this. The charade scene was another one
Mhm.
where that's different every night. We kind of hit similar beats, but we might say different things. And that was kind of a trial and error too, where we're like, well, what if you do this? What if you crawl here? And what if you say this? And we'll say this, and we'll be over here. So that was fun being able to build that out with each other.
Um, I do the scene where somebody does jump off stage. Was hilarious in the fact that like at first I was like, where did he go? Like I didn't even see it happen at first, and also when he just popped back up, I was like,
He's in
people
the
love
front
and
row.
again, people really loved this because they got to feel like they were part of the show and not just
Hmm.
seeing a show.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which I'm thinking there was recently Much Ado About Nothing, and I think Kori, we were
Mhm.
actually there on the same night.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
but
Yeah,
they
the
had
Sunday
the
night.
audience. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, and they had the audience interaction where like she
Mhm.
was hiding behind people, and I feel like
Beatrice
people really
coming
do
through
eat
is
that.
so funny. I love actors in the audience. You can tell too when I've directed a show, there is some point somebody will be in the audience somewhere. Like that's I just love that. And some people don't like that, and those people are no fun. So I love it.
So Josh, how has this show challenged you as a director? Because you said this is the first one that you've actually you haven't just assisted directed, but you have directed, correct?
Yeah, so this is the first one that I'm kind of heading up myself. Um, it is very challenging because so much is going on. And we have a lot of really experienced actors in the show, and we have some actors who haven't performed in 12 years. And so I really tried from the beginning to kind of give each actor what they needed and meet them where they're at. You have people like Alex and Corey who have incredible, like a sixth sense to suss out the audience, and they have great instincts towards comedy, and they only need like the gentlest of steering. And then you have other people who might be a little bit more self-conscious and want more like literal, tangible ideas. And so I really wanted to create an environment where everybody could take ownership in the creative process, but yet at the same time feel supportive. And maybe Corey can tell me if I was successful in that or not. But regardless, I think the show we have speaks well to that end.
Kori, how has this challenged you as an actor?
Um, this it's funny, Josh. I don't think I ever said this to you. I think I said it to Kristen, where I'm like, I always have to, again, because I've been doing it for so long. I direct now too. I've assistant directed. That sometimes you have to be like, okay, somebody else is in charge. Other people have ideas. Yeah, calm down. Like sometimes you just kind of have to think that through. Because Josh and Kristen are seeing the whole picture. I'm thinking, much like my character, about myself. So so to kind of remind yourself that they're looking at the bigger picture, they're seeing what everybody's doing. I'm just kind of worried about myself. So having some grace and being like, yeah, other people have great ideas, other actors. We try not to like give each other direction. It's more of a, hey, if I do this and you're over here, should we kind of, it's more of a gentle suggestion. You don't want to be like, hey, you should come stand over here because I think this would be hilarious.
Yeah.
Um, but we all were really good at being supportive of each other, and almost all of us have worked together at least once. Alex and I have been performing together for almost 20 years now.
Oh, wow.
Madeline and Alex are getting married in December. Sydney has been in multiple shows. Dylan, Madeline, and Alex were all in Young Frankenstein together, so they have a really good rapport. And then Jacob, who plays Richard, is the brand new one who is coming back to acting after over a decade. So that also really helps to have that kind of chemistry already with each other and just that trust. Um,
Yeah.
and I think we all had that, and we immediately built that for those who are a little bit newer. Those of us who had worked together before, we kind of, I think, hopefully enveloped everybody, and
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
just like, yeah, let's just go, let's be
And
supportive.
trust is
Yeah.
big because, in shows like this, it's as an actor, it's hard to feel like, oh my God, I'm not getting laughs that are as big as his laughs or her laughs. But this show is very egalitarian in its humor. Like every character is funny in its own right. And I think
Mhm.
this cast did a great job at trusting the material and trusting their own performances. So they never had to compete for laughs. They could be supportive and we could all collaborate together. And I think that yeah, the audiences are laughing at the jokes, but what they're really responding to is sort of just the good chemistry between everybody. It's very supportive.
There's some excellent chemistry. And I think one of the things too that I think is interesting about the show is that the way that sometimes it does the jokes, it does include everybody. Like I'm thinking, again, don't want to give much away, but like the cigarette gag that kept going on, everybody got to pretty much participate in that,
Mhm.
and like, or like there's the drink cart, and like almost every person got to engage in that one, so
Yep.
that like you're all kind of pulled into that joke. And it's not just like one person gets this gag and it runs through the entire show, just
Right.
them. And I think that's kind of unique to the Cottage in this aspect.
Yep.
One final question for the both of you, and Josh, will start with you. Just what are you hoping audiences take away from this theatrical experience of the Cottage?
Um, it is a very special play. And I think if you spend time with the material, it deals with great themes about sort of how we, define ourselves and define our own agency in life and in love. But as important as those themes are, my main goal is just making sure they have a good time. Like, with everything going on these days, I just want to give people 2 solid hours of pure laughter and fun. We can't solve really any problems, but hopefully we can just make them feel good for a minute. And and who knows what will come of that.
And Corey, how about for you? What do you want audiences to take away?
I love that Sandy Rustin, the author, her whole impetus for this show was, instead of in like the Noel Coward plays where the men sort of end up, they've behaved pretty badly throughout the show and then they sort of get away with it at the end. The women kind of turn that on its head, and the idea is that the women all sort of come into their own. There is definitely a feminist bent to this show. There's multiple lines where things are talked about, and Sylvia often references the mother-in-law who had she reminds me of like the mom from Mary Poppins.
Yes.
And that's who I see the mother-in-law as. And so I hope that audiences kind of take away from that, where the men sort of behave badly, and the women kind of throw it right back at them and hold up a mirror to say, if you're going to act like this, I think we can act like this too, and then let's see how things turn out. But all of that is wrapped up into a funny ball of nonsense, and so you can kind of take that little pill, but it's like a spoonful of sugar. My gosh, this is great. It's like a spoonful of sugar helps medicine go down. Somehow we've turned into Mary Poppins, but
You
there's a
turned this
message
full
there.
circle.
It's funny. Yeah. Wow. I didn't even plan that, but that was incredible. So yeah,
I mean,
I
there
think they'll
is
laugh
quasi
to
tap
think
dancing
about
in
it.
our show, so we're not that far off.
There is, yes. Yeah. There's some dancing. It's great. So yeah, it's nonstop funny. And like Josh said, we could all use some funny for 2 hours.
Absolutely. And so with that, I just want to thank you both for your time. Josh, Kori, it's been a pleasure talking with both of you. And I hope that plenty of people turn out for the show because it deserves all of the praise and all of the fun that it is.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Nice to talk with you too.
So the Cottage runs at the Players Guild of Dearborn for one more weekend. So get your tickets now and we'll see you at the show.